Today, I'm discussing rare, unconventional bench press tips and cues to help you get a big bench, whether that be 100 pounds, 300, 400, or beyond. These tips have helped me bench 400 plus on any given day. We'll go over setup, weird tips and tricks, resources for you, and some of my personal training philosophy. I consider these rare tips because I didn't really watch any videos or was really told to do these tips by anybody. It's just kind of stuff that I learned on my own, even though there are probably resources out there that talk about these as well. It's important to remember, I can only speak to what has worked for me and what hasn't. Everybody's journey is different. I had to watch a lot of videos like this and a lot of trial and error to get a bench that I'm proud of. If you haven't seen my first video ever that I just released a few weeks ago, it talks about what it takes to bench 405 pounds naturally. Check that out as well. That one probably has some information that I won't cover in this video. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like, a comment, or consider subscribing. I have a big goal of reaching 500 subscribers by the end of the summer. If you like this content, please help me with that. One change I've made in the 10-ish years I've been benching is just widening my grip. I used to have a fairly close grip, relying on my triceps primarily, and I got pretty far like this. I think I benched like 335 with what I consider a close grip bench for how I bench now. Notice how my hands are very much within the rings on the bar. I progressed very well for a while, going from like 275 to 330 that year, but then I had a plateau for a long time. Getting to 350 or even 405, I just didn't see that happening anytime soon, unless I made a change. And this is before I competed, but one thing I noticed is I just didn't feel any activation in my chest. My triceps would burn out far before my chest. And I would compare myself to big benchers. Body dysmorphia aside, even those that could bench less than I could, I felt like I had a smaller chest than them. On a side note, one of my personal pieces of powerlifting philosophy is that every exercise, if it's hard enough, it's going to be a full body exercise. It's why for many on a heavy bench, their butt shoots up off the bench. So at some point, your body's gonna force you to use more and more muscles to move the weight if the weight is too heavy to move. So I figured on bench, if I'm not using my chest and all the muscles available to me, am I missing out on strength? The answer is yes. But I resisted the change to a wider grip for a long time. I figured, hey, I'm stronger with a close grip, so why would I consider switching? But I was desperate to get over my plateau. So for several weeks, I just took the strength loss and I widened my grip. It was humbling. Once you're able to bench a new PR, if you're like me, you just kind of want to stay within that range. And it took weeks. I always had to check my ego at the door. But with the wider grip, I started to feel the activation in my chest. I was getting bigger chest bumps. I could notice it growing. I could feel the stretch in my chest on the way down. I was feeling sore in my chest, so I knew it was being worked more than before. And eventually, I was the more stronger for it. I was able to overcome my plateau because I was pushing hard with my triceps and my chest now. I reached 405 later that year for the first time. Everyone is different. Some people have a stronger, closer grip no matter what they do. We could talk about bone length, tendon insertions, leverages all day long. But this switch helped me for several reasons. Like I mentioned, I started pushing with my chest a lot more. This helped at the bottom of the bench significantly, and then I'm able to use my triceps more to lock out rather than using them at the bottom solely. Widening my grip also decreases the range of motion. Before you get mad, in powerlifting, this is actually helpful. It's one of the reasons we arch our backs too. I'll get more into that in a second. But real quick, if your sole focus is bodybuilding, this might not be as important, but you'll see bodybuilders doing that as well for a variety of reasons. One reason is to get that stretch on the chest. But with widening my grip, if I can move it 2 or even 1 less inch, then that is very convenient. And it might add a few pounds to what I can log out. You can argue this isn't a rare tip, but it was one of the primary changes I made to help blow up my bench to the 400s. Here's the next tip. One of the most underrated aspects of benching heavy is how you use your shoulders. Not just in pressing, but during your setup as well. Another piece of my personal philosophy, your setup is the most important part of the entire lift. But this cue applies to both setup and while you're actively pressing the bar. A lot of people think about leg drive, grip width, bar path, but they don't really think about driving their shoulders into or what I consider through the bench. For a long time, I really wasn't intentional about this. I would just unwrap the bar, focus on my arms and triceps, and just press. But once I started actively thinking about driving my shoulders through the bench, my pressing mechanics felt way more stable and strong. The key here is to think of your shoulders as an anchor point. Before you even unrack the bar, squeeze your shoulder blades together and push them into the bench. It should feel like you're wedging yourself into the pad, not just lying on top of it. This locks you in, helps keep tension, and allows you to generate more power from a stronger foundation. You can make an argument that this keeps your shoulders nice and healthy as well. Once I started focusing on this, I noticed my bar path felt a lot more controlled. I wasn't just pressing up anymore, I was pressing back as well, which is a huge key to locking out heavy weights. It's like if anybody has ever told you to drive your feet through the floor on deadlift, but instead on the bench press, I'm pressing my back and my shoulders into the bench away from the barbell, as much as I'm pushing the barbell away from me. For instance, if the barbell couldn't move at all, like it was welded to the rack, I would still be trying to break the bench with my shoulders. This next tip might sound weird, but trust me, it's a game changer. And it's gonna help you with driving your shoulders through the bench, which is what I just taught you. I actually did learn this from a teenager at my old gym. He held multiple state records for his weight class, and I would see him do this all the time during his setup, and I was just wondering what the heck he was doing. And then I tried it and it really worked for me. And you've probably seen people do this in competition where they lift their butt way up during their setup before settling in. And then during the unrack, they bring their butt down. Turns out there's a reason for that. When you lift your hips and your butt during your setup, it makes it way easier to drive your back into that bench, that wedge I was talking about, wedging your shoulders into it. It's kind of like wedging yourself under a heavy barbell for squats. You're trying to create the tightest, most compact position possible. What I do is plant my feet, lift my hips as high as I can, press the barbell away from me a bit, and use that leverage to drive my shoulders into the bench as hard as possible. You're supposed to feel super tight and locked in before you even unrack. Then, once I feel locked in, I lower my hips back down while maintaining that tight upper back position, keeping those shoulder blades squeezed together. This does a couple things. One, it locks in your arch. Whether you have a big arch or a smaller one, this helps get you into the best position possible. It improves leg drive. With your back in a solid position, your legs will be able to drive more efficiently without slipping or shifting, except on this kind of bench. Sometimes you just have a slippery bench, but bands can help with that. So consider banding up if your bench is super slippy. It also creates a better launch position. You'll feel more connected to the bench, which helps with bar stability and control. I started doing this before my heavier sets, and I immediately noticed I felt way more stable under the bar. It's a small detail, but at the end of the day, benching or compound lifts in general, it's all about stacking up small advantages to move bigger weights. Let's talk about breathing. Breathing isn't something a lot of people think about when they bench press, or maybe they think about it a little too hard. For some people, you just take a breath and you press, right? Well, not exactly. And to be fair, this is all pretty subjective. I'm going to teach you what helped me. How you breathe during bench is up to you. Typically, beginners are taught to breathe in between reps, or breathe in during the eccentric portion and then breathe out on the concentric portion. I used to take just a really big, deep breath at the top and hold it for the whole rep or the whole set. And for the most part, that worked fine. But once I started experimenting with different breathing strategies, I noticed I could brace better, control the bar more, and even squeeze out extra reps when I needed to. So in the past, I would just take a huge, big belly breath and brace hard. But over time, I noticed if I took too big of a breath under heavy loads, it just made me feel really lightheaded. And it would fill my stomach and my diaphragm, and I just didn't feel tight. I felt like I was gonna pass out. So I would experiment. I started taking only a half breath instead of a big, deep, lung-filling, stomach-filling breath. And then I would brace. And that actually helped a lot. I found this really becomes more important for me for really heavy singles or doubles or PRs. But when I rep out weight for multiple reps, I need more oxygen. So I learned to take a slightly bigger breath when I'm doing a set above 4 or 5 reps, like a 3/4 of a breath, but probably still not a full one. And honestly, I don't take a lot of effort to breathe out on the way up. When I breathe out, I lose tightness. I really only breathe out at the very top of the rep when I'm locked out. And if the weight is heavy enough, I naturally lose a little bit of breath each rep when I touch my chest and I begin the press. Sometimes some breath escapes. Maybe it's just a small amount, like a half a breath or just a quarter, and I don't even notice it in the moment. So I really only manually or consciously breathe in now if that happens. I press and maybe a little bit of air escapes. I take a small breath at the top, I re-brace, squeeze my hands harder, and start the descent again, holding my breath. The last thing I want to talk to you about today is just some different resources that have personally helped me, different YouTube channels and whatnot. This is your homework for after the video. I don't think I can not mention him when I talk about resources, but I watched a lot of Alan Thrall videos or Untamed Strength when I decided to start benching heavy. So thank you, Alan, for all your wisdom. Please go check out his bench press playlists. He has a lot of really good videos on leg drive, how to arch, all sorts of things. So if you're looking for more like a how-to video, like how to arch, how to use leg drive, what your bar path should be, check out his videos. This next one, he's probably one of the most famous YouTubers now, but I really do like Jeff Nippard's content. Obviously, he's more of a bodybuilding focus than just a strength focus, but he's got a lot of good different exercise selections and explains why they're good. And my caveat to that is, if you're a power lifter, you should probably still be pretty specific to what your goal is. So if your goal is heavy bench press, No amount of chest flies is going to help your bench press that much. But watch his videos because he's probably got some good exercises that'll be a bigger bang for your buck compared to other exercises. So like if your triceps are lacking, should you be doing overhead tricep extensions or skull crushers? If you really want to get in some more volume, check out his videos and you'll probably get those answers. Barbell Medicine is another great resource. These guys are actual doctors. Check out their websites. They have great templates for powerlifting and whatnot. They're not just doctors, they're also strong as shit. I believe they also trained Alan Thrall as well, or coached him for a while. I've learned a lot of really good tips from them, and it's helped me a lot with like pain and injury management and stuff like that. And honestly, I have found the r/gym subreddit is a great place to post for form critiques. Take everything with a grain of salt. It's Reddit. Some people truly don't know what they're talking about. But if the consensus between a lot of commenters is the same thing for checking your form, then I would maybe pay attention to that. It's a good, cost-effective way to get your form reviewed. When it comes to exercise selection and looking at your sticking points and really honing your form, I always recommend anybody, if they are trying to compete, go ahead and hire a coach. Have a coach walk you through a peaking block, and you're gonna learn a lot from it. And whether or not you have a coach, I recommend that you actually do a competition, even if you don't really care about competing. Your first couple competitions, you're there to complete them, not to compete in them. Big difference in mindset there, and I get first meet jitters like crazy, so if you take off the competition name from it, it's a lot of fun. And it's a great networking opportunity. You meet other strong, like-minded people. You start learning from a lot of people, asking questions, asking for help, and people offer it up. And you're gonna have a lot of lessons learned, and doing that over and over again is what it takes to completely max out your bench press to be as strong as possible. And then you can take those lessons learned into your next training block. But if you never compete, you're never gonna have those lessons learned. Things like how much should you eat the day of a competition, what snacks to bring, how much caffeine to take, and a billion other things that can make or break a PR on a competition that day. My first couple competitions were just local charity ones my gym was putting on. They weren't even sanctioned, but you still learn a lot. I hope these rare bench press tips have helped you. These are changes I've personally made to my training. By themselves, they're probably not gonna take you to 100 pounds by next week. But like I said, with compound lifts, powerlifting, or exercises in general, it's all about making these minute little differences that stack up over time. So invest now for these changes, and you could reap the rewards compounded over time. I can only speak anecdotally to what has worked for me, but a lot of my friends have taken my advice and have blown up their bench a little bit more, which is kind of why I started a YouTube channel. If you found this video helpful, please leave a comment. Let me know your insights in the comments. If you have other cues that have really helped you, I'm really interested to read those, and it could help others as well. There's probably some cues and some thoughts in the back of my mind that I'm not really thinking of because they come so naturally. And if you like this content, like this video, give it a like, a comment, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it, trying to grow my channel one day at a time. Thanks for watching. Take care. This is Widening, and this is Penny, and they say to subscribe.